I'm from New York. I would painfully run by Tribeca on the waterfront, and they have that stuff every year. You're like, no film, no film. That's kind of funny. So this year I'm kind of like, I gotta film. So I go to run by, and I'm not kidding, I pulled a hamstring. I said, what do I want to be? That I'm going to position myself in the marketplace as doing Super Bowl spots. That's what I wanted.
It's Bieber, 6G Fever.
105, yeah.
What the f***'s a Bieber?
I don't know, kind of looks like a girl. It was really when the famine hit Somalia, and then the Shabab was basically not allowing the UN into Mogadishu. Just reading this stuff, you gotta do something, gotta do something. I can't just sit back and let another, this kid gotta do something. It was like literally, started just writing the story and based it on the issues that were there, but then made it into a fable and made it accessible and try to capture a little bit of the spirit, which is this sort of like, they just deal. I grew up in Massachusetts. We kind of lived a normal life. And then one day, Dad basically said, we're gonna go live off the land. We went Maine, New Hampshire with him and on a wild ride for several years of craziness. I had a terrible high school, terrible. I think there were 200 kids in my class. I finished 180th.
He told me when he was in high school, the junior in high school, the first job he wanted to be an art director at Doyle Day and Bernback in New York.
There was this program at Phillips Andover, which they took 12 kids from across the country and threw them into this program to just doing art in your senior year of high school. Compared to the normal student up there, I realized how bad I was at art, and therefore I came back with such a perspective on like, wow, I'm nothing. The Daily Orange, which is a newspaper in Syracuse, I used to do the cartoon strip every day. And I did this one strip called Roomies, so you had to have a joke every single day. And if you didn't, you're screwed.
He was going on spring break from Syracuse. I said, no, you're going to New York and look for a job. He said, well, how do I get it? They're not hiring. I said, do a direct piece and do it right to the creative director. He said, he'll never have a chance to read. I said, do it for him. And he got a telephone call and said, I want you to come to work here tomorrow.
I finished first in my class, and even before I graduated, I got a job down here in advertising. And then I started an ad agency at 24, and we did Snapple commercials and the Sports Center campaign like 2 years later.
The reality is, just because you're a former athlete, it doesn't qualify you to be a Sports Center anchor.
After the Olympic gold medal, the Rhodes Scholarship, 10 years with the New York Knicks, I was a U.S. Senator for 18 years.
Any experience in front of an audience?
Well, I gave a keynote address at the Democratic National Convention.
I meant a large audience.
Oh.
We were on the cover of the New York Times business section on Easter. This was 2 years after we launched. I was like 26 at that point. And I was miserable. It's not even 9 to 5, it's like nonstop. You're not doing the work, you're building this company, you're not doing the work. In the middle of all this, I had written a screenplay with Tom DeSorky, who was my partner. And we sold the first thing we ever wrote. In our spare time, we wrote and sold this. We never sold another thing again. You couldn't shoot in Somalia. I mean, that was not going to be a possibility. There is no such thing as a Somali acting community. The country's been blown to smithereens. There's just nothing there. So, there's nowhere to turn except we turned to the communities in South Africa and said, hey, look, we kind of did an open casting call within the communities that had basically they were all refugees that just landed. So when we got into the casting, it was real people. And I love working with non-professionals and just looked for little glimmers of talent. And that's how we sort of got into it. So the boys are brothers. Neither one had ever been to school in their lives, and so they couldn't read, couldn't write any language. I had a couple of people from the community who were doing my translations of my scripts, so I had English all translated over here. We then said, okay, well, then they're gonna have to memorize the script. The boys went home, they memorized it, came in the next day, said, okay, we'll see what happens. Bad acting in any language is bad acting. Wow, this is horrible. It was like a bad school play with Ali, and I'm like, oh my God, like he's struggling to memorize the words. He's done it, but he's just, it wouldn't, and this is not gonna change. And Haroon's over there, like just rattling through his lines, and so we switched them. And it was really great. They support each other throughout the whole process. As it turned out, they couldn't go to school. They're not allowed to go to school in South Africa, not because of refugee status, because they were too old. So we ended up putting them into a special school, and they got through first grade in the first week of school. They'll develop into leaders in their community, because these kids are just so smart. You do root for everybody in there. It's not like competition. You feel like you're all sort of getting to that point, and you kind of root for each other. It's nerve-wracking every time. I'm still thinking about it. You know, is the print right? Is everything right? We're just worried.
What were some of your greatest challenges in pre-production?
You're diving into a world that you know, very little is known unless you've been there, and so you have to do the research on it. And the only research that you have on the world is books, and then of course, you know, you're seeing all the crap on CNN and that's on piracy and what have you. And you know, what's accurate, what's not accurate, and trying to get to the bottom of it, because you're going to depict a culture you've never even stepped foot in there. That was a challenge, because ultimately you don't want to sit there and create a film, put all this effort forth, and then offend the very culture that you're trying to celebrate as far as the spirit.
Listen, wixii ka xoog yar waad ka fiicanta.
qayb galbeys badbaadinta badaha.
Ha sugu wayn.
Qofkas maxay sidaas leedahay sug wayn nolosha waxa u badataa sug wayn.
Seeta walaasha.
Badana way xanaaqsan tahay.
U sheeg inaad soo salaamaayeen.
Taas uma leeyahay inay xalkeeda wax ka bedelayso.
U sheeg inaad taajin noqdo sida Jay-Z.
Jay-Z waa kuma?
Waa ninkan Jay-Z.
It's a hard thing to portray Somalis to a Somali. I was cracking up. Yeah. I was like, this is exactly how we would talk, what we would say. The nuances are not lost. Powerful, because those are very important nuances. Like to Somali language is so important. And the little things that they go back and forth on are incredibly accurate. Richard Burton said about Somalis, and he said, how do you rule over a people where each man is his own sultan?
Yeah,
you know?
that's exactly. Short film needs a place to be shown, needs a place that gets supported, and Tribeca's been amazing. Like, they have that voice out there, people listen, and therefore the film gets that exposure. If this thing hits and wins tonight, then from that point I have to continue to spread the word and generate awareness and hopefully inspire. So that would be awesome.
And now the winner of the Best Narrative Short, which was very, very difficult to determine. Congratulations to the filmmaker and his amazing cast on making a short film that is rather large in spirit, ambition, and accomplishment. The winner is ASAD, directed by Bryan Buckley.
Wow. Oh. Wow, this is like a shocker. I hope that people do see it here, and it'll get out there. And the Somali people, their struggles, their spirit is amazing. You're not in it for the money, you're in it because you love making films and you want a little film to get seen. So when it wins a festival like this, suddenly now it's really being seen and being talked about and taken seriously, and you know, doing the trail of festivals now where people are listening. So if you have a message there, you can really get it out there.